Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have Jeremy with us, and we're here to have a conversation about ADHD. And so, Jeremy, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background with ADHD? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's first and foremost important to note that I have not been like officially diagnosed. I've been seeing licensed mental health professionals for 10 years, and the last 2 years of my life, my executive function slash attention deficit issues have really come on the forefront. That being said, I think looking at the definitions, it's something I struggle with. And before we even, talk about that, I just want to state that I've not been officially diagnosed, although I'm working my way through the American healthcare system where I'm 575th in line for my, evaluation. But I've recognized an observable set of behaviors inside of me, much like the MBTI or the Enneagram side of things, that all kind of point to this issue. And I'm not talking about my ADD makes me forget some things. In the same light as like OCD isn't being persnickety. There's a big broad line between somebody who likes having a thing in their place and somebody who cannot exist in a world where it is not in its place. And with respect to the people in the mental health community, and people who've been officially diagnosed, like when I use the term ADD, I am talking about the DSM level of kind of its effect on your daily life. And that's why I'm approaching it this way. Unfortunately, I don't have the time, money, and healthcare to go get diagnosed and treated immediately. So I'm trying to do as many non-medical interventions as I can to address this. So again, I believe that the observed subset of behaviors in my life constitutes ADD, and it is affecting my life in profoundly negative ways. So I don't have the luxury of waiting for an official diagnosis before I just dive in and start seeing like what it is about my daily life that I can change in order to at least lean into the skid. So with all that being said, I'm Jeremy. I live in the North Midwest. It's 15 degrees in my little rec room in my garage where I'm talking from. I own an axe throwing bar that also is a high-end kind of cocktail lounge. I have escape rooms, and so I have more or less figured out a way to turn my daily passions, and kind of my artistic side into my job. So I came to Joyce maybe a year ago, probably close to a year ago, for some help at the time. We did a bunch of coaching and I learned a lot about myself. And, I'm just trying to survive one day at a time like everyone else. So I'll kind of sorry. I'm also an extrovert. Currently, I identify as an ESFP, although there's some question whether the sensory component is more an adaptation to kind of live in the world that I exist in. I'm a deeply emotional person. A lot of things from the intuitive checklist also ring true for me, meaning like I remember in an episode of Personality Hacker, Joel was talking about like for ENFPs, emotion is the seat of your motivation or something. It was almost exactly worded like that, and I feel that. So that's where I struggle between the sensory and the intuitive. Is I'm a very deeply outwardly emotional person. I don't fear crying. I will cry today. I don't. I relate as well with my sensory body as I do with my emotional body, and sometimes that gets confusing. I think for a lot of today's discussion, like the feeler perceiver side of me are really where are really where I find a lot of my struggles relating to the attention span and stuff like that. And for those who do Enneagram, I am 8w7.
Although Jeremy hasn't been officially diagnosed with ADHD, he does have all the symptoms of it. And also, if you asked any of his friends, they would all say, yeah, Jeremy definitely has ADHD.
Even people
So,
who've known me for 15 minutes. By the end of this video, you will be comfortable diagnosing me with ADD.
and so we're not registered professionals, but I can say it would be obvious to anyone.
Yep.
It's just to give clarity to the audience that we're not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so my first question for you, Jeremy, is how do you feel when people tell you to take a walk and meditate to cure your ADHD?
I'm taming my response now, because my normal response for that would be just pure screaming. It's incredibly frustrating. And you know, speaking to the people who are watching now, especially to you like high J folks, you know, that's the type of advice that somebody, or the high J folks, the people whose external life is fairly well organized. You know, when somebody says go take a walk, in my life, it presumes that I can, not just because of like the workload that I have, but it presumes that that's something that I can collectively possess the willpower and attention span to be able to do. Meditation is one of the things that gets told a lot, because I have the ADD, and then I do have bona fide anxiety troubles that's actually diagnosed by a professional. And like, for somebody who doesn't understand an intense inner monologue, closing your eyes, closing your ears, and trying to focus on your breathing, it sounds like screaming. And I think that's the best way I can describe it, is asking somebody to meditate or to go for a walk or to dive inside themselves for a minute presumes that that's a place where they can actually go. It's like telling somebody to put their boots on before they go walk in the snow. Yeah, of course. But like, that's a piece of advice that presumes that you have boots, right? Or that you have hands to put them on. And I think a lot of people lose sight that, like, we as language speakers don't always possess the ability to discuss the things that we experience as emotional feelers. So it's a lot like being told to go outside and hoist the jib on the mainsail. Fuck, if you don't know what a jib is or a mainsail is or how to tie a knot, like, all you did was sit there and speak at me in a language that I don't have the framework to be able to even respond to, right? When we were talking the other day, because we're talking primarily about ADD in this discussion, that means, you know, the first thing all of the articles say is you should make lists. Okay, that's a good piece of advice. And then they do all of the other things that you should do. But like, where do I write that list down? Because now you're asking me to be responsible for like a place, a repository of lists. Because who's got one list, right? There's the list for house, there's the list for work, there's the grocery list, there's the shopping list, there's the dream list, there's all of these other lists. So you've just asked a person with attention deficit disorder to, in their brain, because we don't organize well on the outside world, to install GitHub into our brain and figure out a way to manage all of this. And I'm sorry, my language is, I'm an old salty line cook, but you're asking us to deal with a fuckload of like internal organization. And for computer people who are trying to get the metaphor, you're asking to store a whole lot inside a RAM, because like we can't work with printed results. I can't be responsible for a pencil, because I mean, man, I set shit down. I set it down over here because I'm working on something. I have a great idea. I get called to my job. I go do a thing. And well, now I have this thing that needs to go on a list. I don't have a pencil. And oh shit, I got to put out another fire. And now my pencil is at one building and my notebook is in my car. And I'm now wearing the same socks. And like, this is for people who are ever going to give a piece of advice. Don't give a piece of advice that you don't understand the framework on how to provide somebody assistance with how to develop that framework, is what I'm saying. People going through the personality journey are talking to their friends about things, and they're, you know what I mean? Oh, you're definitely a J, or you know what I mean? Especially people who've read their first article or their second article. Those are the real experts to all their friends. And you know, like when you're talking to somebody who you're comfortable diagnosing with ADD inside of a few minutes, or somebody who's trying to solve a problem, you should probably start by asking more questions than giving more pieces of advice, which is precisely what you do, Joyce. Because it's a lot like telling me like I should go jogging. Yeah, I know. We all know. We should all go jogging. We should all do yoga. We should all meditate. We should all do all these things. But in a mind that has ADD, I am now in my head simultaneously trying to develop frameworks whereby I can do all of those things, because I should do them all, because all the lists and all the articles say you should do all these things. But to a brain like mine that processes more in RAM, let's say I'm more organized inside my head than I am in printed results or in the real world, it takes a lot more work, because when you write out a list, it's written out. But it's also not stored in RAM anymore. It's not in my brain anymore. So there's a problem. And so that's the 10-minute answer to like it's a lot more complicated than that. And anytime you tell somebody that, oh, it's just this easy to fix this profoundly like distracting part of your life, no. And your answer is to write a list? Like you're the first person in the whole world. Sorry. Like you're the first person in the whole world to like write a list. It's like, be aware that it is a lot heavier of a burden on somebody to reach outside of their specialization. Right? Like that's what that's asking. It's asking me to like, well, dude, just be a J. You know how many times I go to bed like wishing I was like more organized in my outside life? Like, so.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful, Jeremy.
Sorry, I do kind of a Lewis Black type thing when I hit a certain gear.
I want you to be fully yourself, so you do not have to tame yourself. In fact, your message becomes more powerful when you let your emotions unleash. And so Jeremy is referring to how with high TE or FE types, they're good at structuring the world around them. So they organize the outside world. These would be the high J types, right? If you were to just put it like that. And then for the high P types who have higher up extroverted intuition or extroverted sensing, they tend to like the outer world to be freeform, but their inner world to be organized and structured. I'm just kind of decoding the language for people who are new.
And I don't know all of the letters, thank you for translating that for me.
And so based off of this, Jeremy proposes something very interesting about how to help someone like him with ADHD. And you talk about how it's not about telling you to make more lists. It's about teaching you how to organize your internal framework better. And I was like, oh, that's a really creative solution. And I think that would actually help a lot of people who deal with ADHD and haven't found a solution that works for them yet.
Yeah, it's for me as an ESFP, authenticity is a thing that I rely on. And Joyce, you can convert that into the letters.
Authenticity equates to introverted feeling, which is the auxiliary function of the ESFP and the ENFP.
And my wife is an ISFP so she leads with authenticity. And my wife and I, and Joyce has had the pleasure of meeting my wife. She and I kind of share a perspective, politically, ideologically, the way we raise our children. We share the exact same value set, which for people who authenticity is a huge part of in your life, you find it very hard to even talk to people who can't see a world the way that you do. It's limiting, but it's also, part of its specialization. So for me, the process led with if it doesn't feel right, I need to understand that I am not wired to do it then. Or if I am wired to do it, I'm going to feel screaming inside my body for the entire time I'm doing it. Imagine feeling like a 3-year-old eating your vegetables, I know this is good for me and I'm going to grow, but I'm going to hate every second of this. And I needed to stop fighting that in me, and a lot of that didn't come easy, because you have to learn about you. And that's where I was a year ago. I mean, for you ADD people, man, buckle in, it's going to suck. Oh, is it going to suck? Oh, it's going to suck for years. But it's like regrowing skin after a burn. So you really have to understand the way that your particular brain is specialized to manage the world. And for me, I needed to just lean into the fact that I'm never going to be Joyce Meng with really well organized notes with good handwriting and color-coded highlighting and all of the ways that I see a person like you organizing themselves. I'm never going to have that. And it's hard because every article tells you that that's what you have to have. So understanding how to remove a layer of abstraction from it is something that I really worked on. So I know I'm never going to have a fully laid out written plan to organize my world. But if I spend time understanding the challenges that my task list or, the things that are in my way, and my biggest boggles are I'm in a lot of physical pain because I don't take care of myself, which is, tracks within ESFP, who owns a business, and, resilience will grind ourselves into paste. So I try and organize activities that I can do that will reduce pain. I'm not telling myself I got to do yoga. I'm not telling myself I have to exercise. I'm telling myself I remove one layer of abstraction. Yoga counts, but so do all these other things. So it allows me then a little bit of permission to be like, today I don't want to stretch, but like it's cold where I am and I'm going to go shovel snow for 25 minutes, but I'm going to do it in a way that I'm doing it as exercise, not as a chore. Like I'm using good form and getting, you know what I mean? Breathing and focusing on that component of it. I give myself that credit or that grace because the answer to me isn't to do yoga every day for 30 minutes. The answer to me is to do something and not get bogged down in what it is. So removing that layer of abstraction, I'm doing something that reduces my pain, something that reduces my noise, which means like organize something or cross something off the list. Like it almost doesn't matter what it is. Something that saves me a little money and something that saves me a little time. And now I don't really have that many lists because everything I do, and I suppose like I don't put stuff that brings me joy on a list. Like so I would never have a list of things that are fun because making lists is not fun. But like understanding that like everything I do, whether I want to do it or not, is to do something. I eat because I am hungry and need to eat. I, do my work activities because they each need to identify a goal. And laying it out like that has allowed me to feel each list, which means wherever I write it down, I'm more or less copying and pasting from like a decent place in my head.
Yeah, I find that incredibly helpful because when you broaden how to deal with tasks with ADHD, then it helps with finding a way that works for you individually. You're giving people with ADHD permission to not take people's advice literally, and that they should broad way that helps them. And Jeremy brought up the topic of being an entrepreneur and an ESFP. And so he's also an Enneagram 8. And so they're known for intensity, especially if they're the sexual instinct of 8. And when you have a business owner that is like this, sometimes they like to push their physical limits. And being an entrepreneur means you have to wear many hats at once. And so an ESFP may be like, I can do all these things. I can push myself. And so I have a lot of ESFP business owners like John, the ESFP from my panels. If people have seen him before, he calls himself burning the candle at both ends. And then Jeremy calls himself, I don't just burn the candle at both ends, I throw the whole damn candlestick in the fire. Yeah. And so ESFPs sometimes like to expend their body so much.
And if there are, I mean, I'm 42, and if there are any, younger ESFP Enneagram 8s out there, that's the one piece of advice like that I'll give you is like give yourself permission to think about what you want and think good and hard, and you don't have to act if you don't know. Now, there are millions of people who that piece of advice is going to fall flat on because it's just dumb. But like to an Enneagram 8 ESFP, they'll get it. like that message will absolutely land.
So something Jeremy mentions also is a characteristic of ADHD that's known as hyperfixation, or something along the lines of that, where people with ADHD tend to either have trouble focusing even when they need to, or they have hyperfixation on specific things that they do want to do, like for Jeremy being an entrepreneur and really setting his mind to certain tasks. Like it's either intense unwavering focus or this trouble focusing at all. And so it can result in something that is described in Jeremy's life as the unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Mm-hmm.
And he realized that after a while, when you have that, it results in an explosion, because when you have those two types of energy meeting each other, it results in this.
Yeah.
And you realize that overworking is the new smoking. Is the thing. You realize.
And the ESFP, the Enneagram 8, you know, anybody who resonates with those is going to feel the immovable or the unstoppable force. They're going to feel that. That's going to resonate, right? Because you feel like an unstoppable force sometimes. You feel like there's nothing you can't do. And the ADD is the immovable object. And when you slam into it, you find yourself reaching out for help because it's explosive.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is, if you feel like you're always going, it's good to always find time to relax too. Mm-hmm. And with ADHD, sometimes it's hard to find the median between having a hard time focusing, maybe being a state of procrastination by accident, mm-hmm. and also then working too hard at certain moments and then burning yourself out. And so there's this unevenness to energy applied. And so it's a really great lesson that you're teaching people to manage your energy in that kind of way, Jeremy, and also mm-hmm. to broaden advice that's given to you to not specific things that you need to do, but figuring out a way to customize it towards your personality rather than taking some sort of template given to you by someone else, because it works for them, but it's not a template or a cookie cutter that works for you. Absolutely. And that's okay. You don't have to feel shame for it, because that's what type is for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Type makes us realize that we're not a broken version of everyone else. We're just different. We're uniquely different and fascinatingly different, and that's fine. And Jeremy is really good at telling people the message of, then work with that, find out what works best for you, and then propel your life that way. And so thank you, Jeremy, for coming out today and for sharing your wisdom with people with ADHD. And I'm sure people who are ESFPs or ENFPs will resonate a lot with this. And it's quite amazing how you're able to stay with your FI authenticity values, where you really are able to live a life that is in line with your values and principles. You're not willing to compromise that, which is a person of integrity. So
it's really hard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.